The type tool is used to add words to your images in Photoshop. So what's the type tool all about? Well, basically it's just a type or letter editor within Photoshop. And it's actually really powerful. There's a lot of stuff that the type tool can do that you may be surprised. So in this episode, we're gonna go through all the settings and preferences with the type tool. We'll show you how to adjust the spacing between your letters, including tracking, leading, and kerning. We'll show you how you use different typefaces. We're going to go ahead and look at the character menu, and we're gonna look at the paragraph menu as well. So you really get the ins and outs of how to use the type tool in Photoshop. So here's our sample image for today, and you can download this in your course materials. So we're gonna start off with the type tool. I'm gonna hit T on my keyboard for the type tool, or you can simply click right here. It's a big T. Now we have a few different options for the type tool. We're gonna cover these in just a second, but most of the time you're gonna be using the horizontal type tool. Okay, so at its basic, anywhere you click on the image is going to give you a little blinking line there, and we're gonna go ahead and start typing. So I'm gonna type T, okay, because we got a glass of tea. Now, to commit that, I'm just gonna hit this check box up there, and then we have T as our type. So the first thing that I wanna note up here at the top, we have a lot of options with our type up here, okay? And we also have a couple of different menus, different windows that are going to help us with our type as well. So let's go ahead and open those. I wanna go to Window and down to Character. There we go. And I'm going to click here on my tab and bring that out so we can have this be its own floating thing. Okay. The next one, we're going to go to Window and down to Paragraph. There we go. And you can see this is its own, like this tab here. You can click and drag this out too. There we go. And let's go ahead and close that out as well. So we have our character menu and our paragraph menu. And a lot of what's up here, okay, is actually duplicated right over here. So we're gonna go over these different menus here because they go in a little bit more in depth, but anytime there's a duplicate, we'll go ahead and mention that. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off by looking at this type. Now I'm gonna zoom into my image. I'm gonna hit Command plus a couple of times, and I'm gonna zoom way into right about there, and you're gonna see that we've got all these little dots. These are what's known as pixels in our image. And the farther you zoom in, your image is going to get pixelated because images are what's called a raster-based image or raster-based file. In other words, they're made up of tiny little dots that are just different colors. Now, text is vector-based, which means it's actually based on mathematical formulas. You don't ever have to know these formulas, but what you do need to know is that you can scale it up infinitely and it won't lose resolution, which is incredibly cool. So you never have to worry about looking all pixelated and stuff with type. That's not going to happen. Okay, now let's go ahead and scroll over here and look at the edge of our type. There we go. We're just going to zoom in. There we go. And we can see the edge of our type still looks really, really clear. Now here, it still has to register at a pixel level, but we can take our text. Let's just take this guy. I'm gonna hit Control or Command T to transform this, and then we're just gonna scale it up. Look, I'm just gonna keep on going up and up and up. Now we've got huge, huge letters, and you see they still look absolutely perfect. Now, if you were to do that, let's just hit Undo. If you were to do that, I'm going to duplicate our background layer and do that with our background layer. All right, and let's just make that ginormous. There we go. You're going to see that if we zoom in here, we've lost a lot of our quality, right? That does not look like a full quality photo. So that's one of the big differences between the type, which is a vector-based, and graphics or images, which are raster-based. Okay, now let's go ahead and start editing our type. So to start off with, here we have our T. Now I'm going to use my move tool and simply click here on my T layer, and I can move this around. So we're going to start off with our character menu. The first thing we're going to take a look at is our font face. So our font face or typeface. So here you can scroll through your list of different fonts or typefaces that are included with your version of Photoshop. Now, I've got quite a few different different fonts here, and scrolling through them gives me a live preview of what my font actually looks like. Okay, if you want to add more fonts, you can do that with Adobe Typekit. If you have a Creative Cloud subscription, you can go to Typekit, install fonts right away from there, and there's thousands of fonts right on Typekit, and you just like install them and they go right back into Photoshop, which is really, really cool. So if you don't find the font you want, just be sure to check on Typekit, but you do need a Creative Cloud subscription for that. So that's basically changing the typeface. Next, we have options for changing the width or the strength of the type. For instance, with the same exact font, so we're using the Lato font now. Okay, this is a Google font. You can go all the way from a hairline font, which is very, very thin, to the black font, which is extremely thick. So something that I like to do when I'm not a graphic designer, guys, just so we're very clear on that, but sometimes I have to design images, right? Design like little graphics and things like that. So what I like to do sometimes is, let's go ahead and duplicate this T layer. I'm gonna click here and hit Control or Command J, okay? And I'm gonna double click on here, 1 cup a day, and I'm just gonna type in 1 cup a day. All right, now let's zoom out here. You can see it's huge. I want this to be smaller. So the next the next menu item we're going to take a look at is right here. This has to do with the font size. So you can type in a number here. You can click the little down arrow and click on a number, or what I usually do is simply click here on where these 2 T's here. I just click here and drag to the left or the right, and that's going to resize your type. And you can also you can grab the edges here as well and resize it like this. Just be sure to hold Shift, because one thing you do not want to do, you never want to stretch type out like this. That will drive a graphic designer crazy. So be sure to hold Shift and maintain your aspect ratio. Okay, now let's go ahead and say T, 1 cup a day. There we go, that looks great. Now something that I like to do when I'm designing simple things like this are, I'll use one weight for like the main area. So in this case, we're using the black weight for T, and then I'll take 1 cup a day here and I'll give it a different weight. So we'll give it like a light weight. Let's go ahead and go regular, 1 cup a day. So you can see it's the exact same font. Let's just go ahead. I'm gonna hit Command T here and move it over here and hold Shift to maintain our aspect ratio. Stretch it right out to the same width there. There we go. Okay, so there we have a nicely little design, like little slogan type of thing. And what's nice about this is it's the same font, it's just a different weight. So that's one case where using different weights is going to come in handy. Let's hit Shift, I'm gonna click on both of those, and then you can use your Move tool to kind of move this anywhere around your image. Now, I don't wanna put it here because I can't really see it. So that brings me to our next teaching point in the character menu, which is our color. So let's click here where it says color, and I'm gonna click on this and simply bring this to white. So we can click here, go to white, and there we go. Because I selected both of those at the same time, they're both going to be selected to white. Now, another thing you can do is click here on your color, and you can simply, if you're in here, like within your color picker, you can obviously choose the colors. But if you scroll right outside of your color picker, it's gonna turn into an eyedropper, and you can choose colors. There we go, like this really nice light yellow there. You can choose colors from your image. So let's hit OK there. Okay, and here we have T, 1 cup a day. That's the exact same color as that. Now, in this case, I kind of liked it. Like, let's go really, really bright. There we go. That looks really nice. So it's got a little bit of this color, but it's mostly towards white. Okay, let's go back to T here. So we've discovered our different typefaces and our different weights and our sizes. Now, next we have, this is our leading. And from what I understand, this has to do with back in the day when they used to like actually put type together, like on letter presses. They put little pieces of lead between the lines to get all the spacing right. So this basically has to do with 1 cup a day, and I'm gonna hit enter, keeps the dock away. There we go. So this is adjusting the spacing between our lines. So you can give it any type of spacing you'd like. You can have it be quite a bit of spacing between them, or even have it be overlapping, which generally you wouldn't want to do that. So leading has to do with the spacing between 2 lines. Let's go ahead and hit undo a couple of times. We don't need that anymore. Okay, next we're going to look at our kerning. Now this is between characters. So let's go ahead and take a look at our kerning. Now most of the time I highly recommend keeping this on optical. It's just basically adjust the spacing in between each of your letters. Now there's another trick you can do to adjust spacing in your letters. Generally I would stay away from this unless something really looks wrong. So hit T for the type tool and then click here inside your letters. So you can see now I can move my cursor left and right with the left and right arrows on my keyboard. I could type something new if I wanted to. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my cursor right in between two letters, and let's say, oh, this between the O and the N, I want this to be a little bit smaller. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and press left and right. And that's going to actually adjust the spacing just in between those two letters, which can be a fun way of like custom spacing out your own fonts. If, for instance, you're doing a logo design, or you want to, combine a couple, well, that is not really that legible. It looks like a W, but let's say we wanted to combine the U and the P, or make them really, close together or something like that. You can adjust your spacing this way as well. Okay, so this is basically the same thing here as adjusting your kerning. We're just doing it manually, and I like this version better. So again, use your type tool, make sure your type tool is selected, go ahead and click between any letter, and then hold Alt or Option, hold that and hit left or the right, and that's just gonna adjust that spacing. Okay, now if it's a well-designed font, okay, if you're using a high quality font, chances are you don't need to do this. The font designer already defined these values, but sometimes you'll get a font, a free font from the internet, or a font that just wasn't, maybe the person who designed it didn't put as much care in between the characters, and you may have to go in and adjust those. That's a little bit more advanced, but now you know how to do it. All right, let's hit escape there. Okay, next we have our tracking. Now this is for the entire word. Okay, so here the kerning is letter by letter, and tracking is the entire word. And this I actually do wind up using quite a bit. So you can set this number smaller, and the space between each one of the letters kind of shrinks in a little bit. Okay, or a little bit larger, and it's going to pop out. The reason I use this a lot of the time is let's say I have a slogan like this where I'm like 1 cup a day, okay? And I'm like, okay, this is exactly the size font that I want, and it has to line up perfectly with T, but you know what? Right now, I need it to take up a little bit more horizontal space. You can go right here in your tracking and give it a little bit more space. There we go. And make it fit perfectly. So you haven't adjusted the size of the font. It's literally just the spacing in between each one of these letters. And generally you don't want to go, if you go in too far in either direction, you're going to be getting something that's okay, maybe a little bit too much. But a little bit of adjustment can go a long way. Let's go up to 10, and there we go. That looks pretty good. Next we have our letter height. Now, I highly recommend your vertical scale here and your horizontal scale. I highly recommend leaving these alone, because if you start stretching your fonts very, very quickly, they just look just really bad. I'm not a graphic designer. I have graphic designer friends, and they're all like, never, ever, ever, ever do this. It's basically like if you had a picture of someone's face and you stretched it vertically. You would never do that, right? So I highly recommend not doing this. Okay, so let's leave both of those at 100%. Font designers take a lot of care in making these things just right, and I do recommend not stretching them out. Okay, next we have our baseline shift. Now here, I'm going to hit T for my type tool again. Okay, now if you'd like to take one letter, maybe I'll take my T and bring it up. I can simply click there, and it's just going to bring the T up a little bit. Let's hit that checkbox. Now, there's some cases when you would want to do this. In my opinion, I would consider this okay if you then came in here and used the marquee selection tool. Okay, and made a marquee. There we go. And then on a new layer, filled it with this color, and then transformed it so it's the same height there. Okay, so in that case, I would say, sometimes you'll have they'll literally extend lines and things like that, and this makes sense. Or if you're doing 2 to the power of 3 or something like that, or a copyright symbol or a TM symbol, sometimes you want to baseline shift that up. Okay, let's go ahead and undo that a couple times. Get back to where we started. Okay, we've already talked about our color. Now, here on the bottom, we have a few different options. So we have what's known as a faux bold. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and it's going to bold our typeface. Now, this is not the same as a real bold. And basically, a real bold is designed by a font designer. Okay, so that's here. This is the actual bold of this typeface. Okay, now a faux bold, that's basically just puts a stroke around the letter, making it wider. Okay, so if your font does not have your different weights, then maybe sometimes you have to use the faux bold. But if your font does have different weights, like I've got here, like I can just choose bold, it's way better to just choose bold than just do the faux bold. Okay, and we also, the same thing with italic. Okay, so this is a faux italic. It will literally just like transform your letters. Okay, but again, if your font face has, for instance, this has like bold italic, click there. That's going to be a lot better because that was designed by the font designer, and it's not like it's not trying to like force it in. Okay, next we have all caps. So let's go ahead and click there, and that's very simple. Turns it all caps. And here we have small caps. So it's going to turn the first letter large, and the next letters are caps, but they're the same size as small letters. Okay, next we have our superscript. So it's going to pop it up. So for instance, if we had, let's hit T and just select the A. If we wanted a superscript, just the A, we could do that. Okay, we can subscript the A. Let's go ahead and, there we go, subscript it. That's going to pop it down. Okay, we can underline. There we go. In this case, it's underlining T, and it happens to be way down there, which is kind of fun. And we can strike through as well. So you can do that with any of these characters. So you can see we have a ton of options here within the character menu in Photoshop, which is really cool. And all this I do consider under the type tool because we're talking about type. So we're almost done with the character menu. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look. We do have a few options here for standard ligatures and standard contextual alternatives. This has to do sometimes when you have scripts that like lead into each other. You can turn those like leading lines off and on with these different options down here. So normally I just keep those unchecked. Now, every now and then you'll have a font and it doesn't look it doesn't look really sharp. And that has to do with your settings right here. So this is your anti-aliasing. And with no anti-aliasing, you can see, let's just zoom in a little bit. You're going to see it looks a little bit like jagged right around the edges. Okay, so you can change this to something like crisp. It's going to clean it up a little bit, or smooth. It's going to clean it up even more. Okay, so if you do notice that your fonts just, the edges, your anti-aliasing, if it's either too harsh or too soft, you can change that right here. And the default is crisp, which is going to work very well most of the time. Okay, now we're moving on to our paragraph window. So the paragraph window has to do with multiple lines of text. So let's go ahead and I'm going to create a new type here. And this time, instead of just clicking on the horizontal type tool, I'm going to actually click and drag. So we're going to click and drag. Oh, you know what? That started selecting my T. So let's go ahead and turn these invisible for now. I'm going to click and drag a new spot. So you can simply click with your type tool if you want. That's going to start a new word. Or you can click and drag, which creates a paragraph space. Okay, we're going to go up to type, and I'm going to go to where it says paste lorem ipsum. Now this is what's known as dummy text. It's just like when you're doing mock-ups and things like that. Okay, so we just pasted a bunch of text into that paragraph. So let's go ahead and bring our size a bit smaller. There we go. I'll hit enter on here. And let's click here and bring our size smaller. Cooperate. There we are. Okay, so our size of our text is a bit smaller, and I can't even see this, so let's go ahead and choose this to be a different color as well. I'm going to bring all these down just a little bit. There we go. That's kind of fun. So now let's go ahead and make our font size even smaller. There we go, and I'm just going to erase this away. So it's like we have a little, a little header, a subheader, and we have a little bit of paragraph text. Let's hit enter, and then I'm going to use my move tool and just center all that up. Okay, now we're ready for our paragraph. So with a paragraph, we can left align a paragraph, we can center align, or we can right align. Okay, now what's nice here is you can do this for multiple different layers. So if I shift click all of these, I can have them all left align if I want. And you'll notice they're not lining up right now. So if they're left aligned, I highly recommend clicking on your move tool and then aligning them left with your move tool as well. So the paragraph, this will dictate how the type is like center, left, or right, but the move tool will align multiple layers together. So I'm going to click here on the left. There we go. So now what I know is that the left side of my T is the same as the left side of 1 is the same as the left side of this paragraph. Okay? Now, let's go center here. So I'm going to have them all be center aligned, and I'm going to center align them with my alignment controls. Okay, and now they're all center aligned. Okay, so what this means now is if I take this guy and start erasing it away, time is of the essence. Now I know it's going to be exactly centered with T and my paragraph text because I've aligned it center and my text is aligned center as well. Okay, so while you're doing like mock-ups and design and things like that, this paragraph text can be really, really helpful. Okay, next we do have other options for indenting, like the first line. Okay, we can indent the entire block of text. Okay, we can indent just the first line if we want. And you'll see this sometimes with like magazines and things like that. There we go. All right. And we can indent this, add space before the paragraph. I've never used this one. All right. Probably a clue on whether you guys are actually going to use this or not. Next, we have our justify. So we can actually bring these a little bit wider. So if you need this to fit between your spaces. In other words, if I just have this center aligned, it's not going to force it to go to the edge. If I go ahead and justify to the left, center, or right, it's going to force it to go all the way to the edge, which is going to change your spacing in between your words and your letters. Okay, so your spacing is going to get a little bit weird here, but if you need something to fit exactly, you know, like for visual reasons, if you need something to like stretch out there, this is why you would want to justify. Okay, so and then this one will stretch that last letter out, that last word way out, which I don't recommend doing that. So let's go ahead and left justify that. Okay, so we've seen quite a few options here with both our paragraph and our character menu. So we're almost done with the type tool. Next, we're just going to go, we'll show you a couple more things you can do with the type tool, including vertical type, and then we'll be done. So let's go ahead and try converting T. I want to convert that into vertical type. So in this case, I'm using the horizontal type tool. Okay, now there is a vertical type tool here, but you can also simply click on this button right here, and it's going to switch between vertical type and horizontal type. Okay, so you can see vertical type and horizontal type. Now we have T. There we go. There's an example of when you might want to use a big T and with the rest, but this says tone cup a day, which obviously makes absolutely no sense. But there's an example when you might want to use different letters. So vertical type here, okay, is the same thing whether you do this here or if you simply create a vertical type tool, okay, and start typing like that. So I just created there we go, a little time. And generally, I don't wind up using this very often. You can use it for like, there are certain times when you do want to do this, but most of the time you will obviously be using your type left to right. Okay, next time we have vertical type mask as well. Let's just go to a regular horizontal type mask because vertical basically does the same thing. So I'm going to click here and we're going to type in time. Now this became a selection. Okay, so this as a selection you can then use in a lot of different ways. With the selection active, well, you can do, for instance, I could create a new layer here and I could use my brush tool and I could paint a couple different colors in. All right, so we'll paint some of that color and paint some of that color. All right, so you can see we basically, let's put it right over here so you can see. So basically creating a selection out of text, I just painted a couple of colors in. Now let's do the same thing one more time. I'm going to do our horizontal type mask, all right? And we're going to type in T. Okay, I have caps lock on. I want to turn that off. Let's go ahead and make our font really large here. There we go. And I want to make this black, giving it a very, very strong weight. All right, there we go. Let's go back to our tool here. All right. Oh, I applied it. All right, we'll try one more time. T. All right, and let's have that left justify. There we go. And let's hit that checkbox up there. And then with that selection, you could do something like add a layer mask. Okay, and then you'd have basically, let's unlink these two. And and then you could use a layer mask to like just show the T or something like that. But this is kind of a complicated way of doing that. Honestly, what I would do is just create like your, create your regular type, and then you can turn any layer into a selection by holding Control or Command and clicking on it. Okay, and then you could just do the same thing here. You could just do that same thing, just making it into a selection. Cool. All right, let's just hit undo a couple times. So let's go ahead and find our tea time here. 1 cup a day. All right, let's go ahead and align all this up again. So I'm going to hold Control or Command. We're going to click here, here, and here. Okay, I want those all to be center justified. There we go. Center justified. You know what? Let's just make it left align. There we go. That looks good. Now we're going to go ahead and center align all of those. So I know it's a little bit confusing, but this has to do with the paragraph text itself. And up here, if you have your move tool selected, these are your alignment controls, which work on any layer. So let's align our horizontal centers. Oh, I want to make sure I'm not selecting my background too. So let's align our horizontal layers. There we go. That looks good. And now I just need to bring my T up so I can, there we go. Simply click my up arrow a couple times, and here we have a little mock-up. Tea, 1 cup a day, and then lorem ipsum. Let's hit F for full screen. Okay guys, well there we have it, the type tool in Photoshop. I know we covered a ton in this video, but hopefully it gives you a good idea of what you can do with the type tool. So when doing mock-ups or design in Photoshop, you really can do a lot with the type tool. I hope you enjoy it and have a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.